Thanks, Gareth, and it's great to be part of this event. Today, I'll be talking about a people-centric approach to data-driven transformations. My name is ASIF Gill. I'm associate professor. I'm also director of DG SAS Research and Innovation Lab at the School of Computer Science, University of Technology, Sydney. There's a lot of things to get through today, so I'll get started. Before I dive into the actual content, I just want to set it up front. What is information? What do we mean by information and data? We somehow change it, use it interchangeably. So looking at information has three elements. One is the data, and the second is analytics and intelligence. That's what we use to make decisions for certain actions and outcomes. So really important is that data is a part of information. That's why I somehow less likely use the word data, more use the word information, because more comprehensive and inclusive. Let's put things in the perspective. Information can be stored in different organizations. They're different systems. They go through a different life cycle as well. But information might be going through a life cycle in one organization. Let's say release information here at the cycle stage can be collected by another organization, and then one collected, another one prepare, and then another one actually use that. So information goes through a different life cycle when information is being used and being shared amongst a different organization in the ecosystem. So really, this draws our attention to the concept of actors and interactions. Actors are interaction, they exchange information for certain purpose or certain drivers. So that's really the key focus of my work has been in last 12 years. And based on last 12 years, based on this logic of actors and interaction, I have developed a framework which we call Digital Ecosystem Information Framework, which looks at the information or the data beyond the boundary of a single enterprise. So what is that in a framework? That framework is organized into three areas. One is looking at the steering area where the leadership comes into play, and then looking at the enabling area where they enable the execution of the information or information operations. So all these three areas, they work together to drive value out of information of data. And in the heart of this framework is that the informational organism, their interactions, which we call actors and interaction. These actors and interaction, they drive all those steering, enabling, and executing. And they are also the part of the execution as well, where different information types, actors, they interact with that, and actually they're able to interact that information through using some kind of information system development approaches or information system, their engineering and operations of those systems, and information itself. And those actors and information and interaction also involve modeling, visualization, and storytelling of information as well. But this is actually the happening part. And this is the enabler part where the information project program, portfolio, information quality processing, at the back office stuff kind of happens. And then information access, protection, and forensics is enabled as well on executing the information. So this is really a kind of meat in a sandwich, but that's really a front office, middle office, and that's where our leader, it's not a back office, it's the leading and steering the information and enabling and executing the other aspect of the framework. And when we look at the steering part, we have information culture and leadership and support. It sets a foundation for developing the strategy, architecture, and governance of the information or data. And then we are guided or influenced by information laws, regulations, and standards. So this makes up our steering or leadership part, which actually helps the enabling team, and enabling team helps the execution team. And that's how all the information is being used and being collected, and value is driven out of it. So taking that, today's presentation, I'm going to take more into the information actors and interactions part, and also going to deep dive into information strategy, architecture, and governance part as well. So let's start with first information actors and interactions. If you're looking at the information actors and interaction, what do they really mean? When we're looking at the actors in the digital ecosystem, we have different actors. Those could be individuals and organizations. They have different roles. with regards to accessing information, providing information, and there are contracts that drive or govern the execution and access of information. And then there are also the goals around that as well, because information is being used or accessed for a certain purpose. So actors really looking at their roles and contracts and their goals. And those actors, they interact with the information through certain interactions, or I call that information transactions. And those information transactions could happen or could be accessed via interfaces. And that also involve information lifecycle management and information value chain, which I will discuss a little later on. And then actors interact with the information through those interfaces and those transactions. But what is in the information box itself? Information is a data in a context, if you put it that way. So that has a form. And then that form of data or structure also has content, which has semantics, explain the data. And then those data and semantics, they're stored in some kind of a container, which we can call document. So data, contents, and container are the, or the documents are the key things where they hold the information. So let's look at quickly the information itself. If you're looking at a large organization, you have thousands of applications or data stores. And then if that is integrated with the digital ecosystem, the other agency, other organization, they have their own systems as well. So we're looking at hundreds and thousands of systems and millions of data elements. So when you're looking at your information landscape, where to begin and how to identify information which are relevant to your digital ecosystem. Digital ecosystem, you might be working in a digital health ecosystem. You might be working in a digital financial ecosystem. You might be working in a digital retail ecosystem. So there are different ecosystems and your organization is a part of that ecosystem. So when you look at your information, you always look information being a part of a larger ecosystem and being already by default integrated, interoperable, and available for use. So we have developed this 9-dimensional information identification lens, which we can use and we have used across different projects. So that can be helpful to organize, identify your information. It could be around organisms you identify in your landscape, individuals, organization, animal plants, and then those individual organization, others, they interact with each other at a certain place. They're associated with some place. And those association or interaction happens at a certain point in time. And when they interact with certain things. And those interactions are driven by some events and mechanisms. And then that interaction have a certain state. And in the end of that interaction, there's some kind of intuitions, feelings, desires, intentions, or feeling happy, sad, or satisfied. If you look at your customer point of view, that comes out as well as a part of that interaction. And the consequences, what benefit or value driven out of that information interaction. So that's a way the lens could be used to identify information across your landscape. Then we're looking at the information. Information has a data part, the content, and the document. But all these things are linked via a relation, which we call the links. Information is linked to each other. They do not sit in isolation. These are some of the examples of the data form. I would not probably be able to go into detail in that, but there's structure, semi-structure, unstructured forms of data we deal with. And the relationship, we look at that. We look at that information and relationship as a form of hierarchical information, which we call information or data taxonomy. And those link or relationship could be around ontology, which could be association comes into play as well. And those information needs to have identity as well. And those relationship as well, those have identity as well. So identity, taxonomy, and ontology, they define the relationship of those information elements. And if you look at the content side of it, content, we have the value, information scale, information meaning, and context. And that's how we describe the semantic of information or a content. And those informations are certainly we need to hold somewhere, and that's where our container come into play. I'm really looking at the technology independent view here. Important is we go back to the basics. So the document is not only a PDF document, but a document is anywhere you containing your information. And those could be a simple object, your binary object or digital objects or your databases or your files. organized into your databases. And then we're coming back to the actors who interact with that information. So the actors, they have roles and contracts and the goals, and that actually allows that to access the information. In particular, we talk a lot about now as a challenge, how we effectively share information between different agencies, organizations. And that's where we're looking at those roles playing in the interaction. And then there's a contract for that information access and use, and there's a goal and objective around that. And that's really helps us later on to develop our information or data strategy. So looking at the role in the interaction, there could be one active actor and there's a passive actor. And they could be one is asking for information and one is providing, or one is initiating the interaction. So that's where we can look at that. Who are the initiator of the information transaction? Who are the actually responder? And the contract, we really can look at that currently in the mode of smart contract. So smart contract, digital contracts can help us to define these automatic rights, responsibilities, and parameters, which we can help us to govern the use of the information as well at the execution layer. And the goals certainly define our purpose, drivers, and outcome, which we need to look at that. So this really sums up the actor side of it. So we looked at the information side, we looked at the actor side. I just want to take a moment and I'm going to talk about the core of it, which we call information interaction or transactions, and that's really key. And what is involved in interaction? Interaction is achieved via an interface. Here we can see that here. And then there's the information lifecycle is being executed through that interface. And then there's information value chain. These are two different concepts. Somehow they are interchangeably used, but certainly they are two different things, which I'm going to have a look at that in a minute. So interface allows you to be able to manipulate the information lifecycle or interact with the information lifecycle or information value chain. And this, you also can call that this interaction journey, which is enabled via interfaces. If you look at the interface, we have at least three top things. We're looking at the touch point from what is the touch point, a starting point of interaction, and which channel allowed to or enable that interaction, and what was experience like outcome. If the information is going beyond the boundary of a single enterprise, how seamless is that to access or share that information across different channels and different touch points? So really important when we're looking at our architecture to consider that because we actually experience with information. So really we need to understand behind the customer or user experience, what is the information experience? And that will help us to identify certain strategy and architecture to enable that. The part of that interaction is the information lifecycle. So it goes through different lifecycle stages from discovery to all the way to restoring and recycling information. You can see that here. I do not have deleting the information or destroying the information. Information is never destroyed. It can move from one system to another. It's somewhere sitting in some kind of backup. They might not be accessible at a certain point in time, but that's there somewhere. So that these are some of the life cycle point of view, how information goes through different life cycle from starting to ending. Where the information value chain is a little bit different. Information value chain is about from a perspective of information use. Information is only valuable when it's in use. If it's sitting in your stock or database houses, it's pretty much like any other product and service which is sitting in your warehouse and incurring cost. So information, it has a value unless it's being used. So that's information use perspective. We source, consolidate, consume, and action information. Once we have identified those information, what is the information in the context of our own organization and in our ecosystem, and what are the actors involved in that, and what are the key interactions are, and based on scoping on them, we can define which interactions are really important for us for achieving our goals, as I mentioned in the actors slide. That's where we identify our information strategy. Information strategy or data strategy means different things to different people. But what is really is that some of the strategies I have seen, they're quite long, 40, 50, 60 pages strategies. Are they really actionable strategies? And I can read them like a book. So it's not really a point of writing a long strategy. We just need to have enough strategy, information or data strategy, to provide a guidance or direction. And that's where these are the 8 key elements which you can look at that when you're developing your strategy, and how these elements could be structured or reported. So this is the information or data strategy on a page where you can see there are those 8 elements are from different angles. They can capture providing direction. Here we're providing a direction from what actions and what goals needs to be achieved, pretty much like from strategy and goal perspective. So we can achieve our mission and vision, and we use some levers and drivers to drive that. And then strategy is all about change. What new things we need to address, what delta we need to have. And we have the threats and opportunities, maturity and performance assessment. And based on that, we say that what needs to be achieved, and that will form part of your strategies and goals and all these things. So it's kind of a top to bottom and bottom to upstream. And this is also is important here in information data strategy to define a strategic high-level architecture and the roadmap. And it's about also how you execute that strategy. Without strategic governance, it's very difficult to track and execute the information data strategy. It is not information governance, it's strategic governance, how we execute the strategy and how we oversee the direction we provided and make sure that is achieved in an agile and iterative manner. Some thoughts about that. We don't have enough time in this keynote presentation, but I'm just going to talk about a bit of a change side of it, because that's important. How would you go about identifying the change? And how would you identify and use that for strategy development? So here's a little example of that. You're looking at information or data capabilities. And then you're looking at what are the threats and opportunities which can lead you to identify the pain points across different information or data capabilities. And not all capabilities might be important for your context based on the interaction you want to facilitate, or not all the pain points might be important. So you really need to work with your stakeholder to identify what is the importance of each pain point. And then you move into their current state and target state. You look at some kind of a change, how much improvement you need across different capabilities, and put together some kind of maturity level. Maturity tells you about the capability you have, and then maturity needs to be linked to the performance area. So you look at that, what performance area will be linked to if you uplift the maturity? What's the point of uplifting the maturity if there is no gain or there is no performance enhancement? So performance could be looked from these 5 elements as well: financial, customer, staff, risk, and resilience. And you can tailor it for your own context as well. And you drive those metrics measure, which you need to measure what performance is your current and what you target. And targeting, how to achieve a target, you're looking at developing a strategy. And this is another example of our information or data strategy on a page, which you can look at that. There's mission, vision, goals, and objective strategies, but also there's a KPIs, and there's a current and target KPIs, just linking back to the previous slide. And then we're looking at how to execute the strategy. We need to have architecture. So information and data architecture is a part of a bigger picture, which is enterprise architecture. So you use your own framework somehow, where I'm using here one of the adaptive EA framework, which we developed. We look at the information and data layers. And then we're looking at some other layers within the enterprise architecture, which we look at the information services layer, or the platform, or the application, and the data out of the layers. And then what you need to do in the information architecture, you're looking at that, the different things which we can do in information and data architecture, which I'm just showing in front of you. And then you approach the information architecture from stakeholder point of view. And then that's where the stakeholder-driven approach, you can do that. Then you need to scope what model you need to produce as a part of your information architecture. And then also you're looking at what roadmap would be the part of that performance assessment and capability uplift. And then you initiate your backlogs, and that's where it stops. And then we're looking at the case studies. We work with that. This is one of the upstream case study, integrating or sharing information across 25 different repositories. And then there's another smart building case study, which the details you can read from there and get from these references. And thank you very much for listening to me. And thank you very much, Garrett, for inviting me and sharing my thoughts with you. Over to you, Garrett. Thank you.